Oh my gosh.
Believe this. Between 214 and 212 BCE, Marcus Claudius Marcellus led a Roman army and fleet to the port of Syracuse, Sicily, in an attempt to invade and take over the city. The ships that he led were equipped with siege towers and scaling ladders, designed to penetrate the city's gates. Now at that time, the city was being defended with the help of a mathematician and inventor we know as Archimedes. The Romans had no idea what they were in for as they approached a seemingly defenseless city. Two of the laws of Archimedes are the law of leverage and the law of buoyancy. With that in mind, Archimedes helped set up a few defense measures against the Roman ships. One was a huge crane. At the end of the crane was a giant iron claw or hand. Some say it was a hook. It was basically a giant version of those helping hand grabber reacher tools. They used it to grab onto the Roman ships, and this iron claw would lift the ships out of the water and stand them up vertically on their sterns. I want you to understand that this was no primitive design. This crane had control levers just like the ones we use today. And Polybius, a Greek historian, describes the iron claw swinging at the end of a long chain until it could latch onto a ship. Then the operator could press down on the lever to lift the ship up out of the water. There were tight gaps between the walls to allow archers to shoot out at the army. They had catapults that could target ships at various ranges. They also had a laser. Designed with a curved mirror, they were able to direct the sun's energy and create a laser that would light the ships on fire. Genius, right? The city was able to defend itself this way for a good 2 weeks, and then finally the Roman army did capture Syracuse. This is a perfect example of how we hear a story like this and automatically assume that the technologies used or described were not as sophisticated as something we could put together today. Nothing we really have today is new, and much of the experimentation needed to put these technologies to work was done years ago. We've seemed to have rebooted the old cyber age. There are legends, old rumors of how governments such as Russia, Germany, the US, China, Japan have been involved with secret military programs, especially in times of war. There seemed to be this race for the best technology back in the 40s and 50s. There's a story about the Soviets of the old regime who definitely took advantage of what they could get away with in that time period. It turns out that many of their secret experiments involved the use of dogs. One of their main projects was centered around the revival of organisms. I won't get into the details of what they did to the dogs, but basically they were killed in numerous ways to see if they could somehow be brought back to life with their inventions. They were able to revive several of the dogs, but they would only remain reanimated for a few minutes. Any Wolverine fans out there? Well, of course, you may know that his skeleton is fused with metal. Now, this would normally kill a person, but because he has a healing factor, he is good to go, for the most part. Now, that's a comic book character, right? So how come the Soviets allegedly tried this? And from what I understand, they had volunteers. Somewhere between the mid-1930s and early 1940s, the Soviets created and ran a super soldier program. 300 volunteers. I know you can imagine what they attempted to accomplish. Again, this is a theory. This comes from an article out of the Small Wars Journal in 2018 entitled Beyond Human, Rise of the Super Soldier, a primer. In 2011, Russian media giant Pravda made controversial statements about super soldier experiments conducted on Russian volunteers as far back as World War II. It claimed that from 1936 to 1941, Soviet scientists implanted golden electrodes into the brains of hundreds of volunteers, thereby controlling the nerve centers to make them immune to pain. It is also stated that physical enhancements were tried during this period, with their limbs receiving titanium implants that allegedly protected soft tissue against landmines, shells, and gunshot injuries. It alleged that these experiments were eventually deemed a failure, as the implants created tumors and the bones rejected the metal. While these claims have been rubbished by numerous commentators, there is legitimate research underway today along similar lines. So let me just discuss what the rest of this segment in the article presents. Now, back in 2017, there were reports that the U.S. military was investing $65 million into a development project that would allow humans to connect to the digital world using their brains. U.S. military to spend 50 million euros on digital brain implants to create super soldiers. A statement from DARPA said the program, known as the Neural Engineering System Design, aims to develop an implantable neural interface able to provide advanced signal resolution and data transfer bandwidth between the brain and electronics. So the goal here would be for them to create the software that will enhance the senses. They want a soldier to be resistant to blindness and paralysis. They want the soldiers to be able to communicate with each other as to not alert or alarm any enemy soldiers. Stealth communication. In 2016, Vice put out an article entitled, "An artificial cyborg implant has been fitted on humans for the first time. Cyborg Nest North Sense lets you feel the Earth's magnetic field through an embedded circuit board on your chest." Which is stupid. This is actually a piercing with two rods that go into the chest. Then they attach a micro vibrator to the rods in the shape of a microchip. So when you are facing north, it vibrates to let you know. So now you can be Northman. I always face the right direction. I told you, truth was stranger than fiction. You can't make this up. It's too smart to make up, right? Just about as smart as the Cyborg Foundation. I get it. Even if you're a person who likes piercings, you could at least make the thing cool looking. A microchip. New Scientist put out a report in 2013. First mind-reading implant gives rats telepathic power. The world's first brain-to-brain connection has given rats the power to communicate by thought alone. Many people thought it could never happen, says Miguel Nicolelis at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. Although monkeys have been able to control robots with their mind using brain-to-machine interfaces, work by Nicolelis' team has, for the first time, demonstrated a direct interface between two brains, with the rats able to share both motor and sensory information. See, nothing Elon Musk is doing is really new. Neuralink isn't new. Launching rockets isn't new. Autonomous vehicles aren't new. Digging tunnels isn't new. Flamethrowers aren't new. So nothing he says about future projects should be surprising to you. If this is what the US is doing and has been doing, then what are the Russians doing? The US has accused them of the same practices among other countries. And in the name of national defense, they will probably go as far as they can with this. When you see these things happening, you know that countries like the US and Russia do not want to get left behind in the development of these types of technologies. And it seems that these countries like China are willing to go all the way. So how far are the US and Russia going to take it? I don't know what it is with people and dogs, but apparently China has been experimenting with gene manipulation themselves. MIT Technology Review publishes first gene-edited dogs reported in China. An extra muscular beagle has been created through genome engineering. Are we on our way to customizing the DNA of our pets? No, we're on the way to customizing the DNA of people. They say so themselves. The ease with which gene editing can be carried out has raised worries that humans could be next. Those fears were stoked in April when another Chinese team reported altering human embryos in the laboratory in an attempt to correct a genetic defect that causes beta thalassemia. This is a hemoglobin deficiency in the blood. I'm telling you, the days of Noah are upon us. How come no one mentions that we are just repeating ancient history? And like I said, what are these other countries going to do, knowing that countries like China are trying to get ahead of them on this? The Atlantic Council published an article in 2017, Gene Editing in China, Beneficial Science or Engineering Military Threat? A gene editing technology that has already shown tremendous medical breakthroughs has some wondering if cancer and HIV can be defeated by genetic engineering. But despite the optimistic headlines, the technique known as CRISPR is also becoming an emerging international security threat. CRISPR could someday enable U.S. adversaries to genetically engineer bioweapons or even create super soldiers to dominate future battlefields. Scientists in China are racing ahead. They have already modified human embryos, cloned a dog, and spliced genes in monkeys and mice. Meanwhile, some American biotech firms are exporting CRISPR technology for legitimate scientific discovery around the globe. But their sales efforts sometimes targets customers in China who may be conducting beneficial civilian research or developing sinister military applications. CRISPR is the popular DNA or gene editing process or technique. Now, the group notorious, of course, for secret military projects were the Nazi military, from super soldiers to UFOs even. But we can't leave out the US. Everyone has heard of MK Ultra. Now, a few years back, they did come forward with some ideas of what they wanted to put millions of dollars into. This comes from The Express. US announces mysterious 12 million euro experiment to create bioenhanced super soldiers. The US military has announced a 12 million euro project that will carry out secret experiments with the ominous goal of creating a bioenhanced super soldier. The project, intended to revolutionize warfare, is titled the Biomedical Human Performance and Canine Research Program. The automata was a word used before we had the word robot. And if you go back and look at some of the ancient stories of inventors in large cities, you'll find examples of this technology throughout. According to the time of publishing these reports, this is old technology. We really have no idea of how far they have gotten and what they are going to show us next. We just have to make sure we are paying attention so that it doesn't become the news we missed. There's more madness to come, folks, so stay tuned.